The fastest way to lose money investing in real estate is buying old homes just like the one behind me. Now, these properties come with deep discounts that look great on paper, but I can promise you they are money pits. And in this video, I'm going to show you exactly why you should avoid houses, old houses, just like this one right here. Let me repeat again. You should never buy old houses, okay? I've seen this happen over and over and over again. I can promise you, like I'm being dead serious. I have seen investors lose tens of thousands of dollars simply because they bought an old home. As a matter of fact, and this may sound crazy, but it's true. I knew an investor who once started a GoFundMe page just so she could raise money for repairs for this old beat up junk house that she bought that she should have never bought. Well, I can promise you it did not end well for her. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk you through at least 7 reasons why I'm urging you never to buy an old house ever. All right. So point number 1 is old sewer and plumbing lines. Like this is a big problem for old houses. So when you're buying a house, it may look great on paper. If it was built in, anywhere from 1900 to 1950 or so, you're thinking, oh, this is going to be a great deal. If you don't know what kind of plumbing is in the property, if you don't know what kind of sewer lines, I remember some of the first properties I bought had clay sewer lines. And so what happens is that the roots from trees, from shrubs, from all kinds of things grow through the clay sewer lines and cause a backup. And I would get calls from the tenants and they would say, hey, we need to unclog my toilet or unclog the sewer line. And so I would send somebody out there, they'd unclog it. The problem is, guess what? Roots keep growing and they keep growing and they keep clogging this stuff up until eventually you have to replace all of these sewer lines. And replacing a sewer line is extremely expensive depending on the municipality. Like you have to get permits, you have to get people involved, construction costs. I mean, you're digging up this sewer line and replacing another one, and it just gets super expensive. We're $15,000. And these are expenses that most people who are buying these houses are not factoring in. And so they get caught with this huge bill, and it just totally wrecks the return that they thought they were going to get on their property. So that would be point number 1. Point number 2 is outdated electrical system in the house. This is a big problem, especially in these older houses. When they were built, they weren't really built for central heat and air and all those things. So if you have this old knob and tube wiring in the house, first of all, it's a fire hazard. Second of all, it's not going to handle the electricity that you need to power modern appliances. And so what you're going to find out is if you buy this old house, you may get all of a sudden somebody says, hey, in order to have the central heat and air, or in order to have these appliances, you're going to have to replace the electrical system. And that is going to cost you many thousands of dollars. I remember recently a friend of mine bought an old house and he was going to sell it as is. But the first thing he had to do, he said, what I have to do is upgrade the electrical. And this was in an older house, but he was spending, $6,000 to $7,500 to upgrade the electrical. Now, most rookie investors, new investors, don't know what they're looking for in this regard. And so you could buy that property and not have the electrical upgraded. And then this becomes an added expense that you weren't really aware of. And also this requires permitting and it can get very expensive just depending on what needs to be done to the house. So this would be point number 2. In these old houses, a lot of times the electrical has to be completely redone. Okay, point number 3. Now, in these old houses, depending on where you are in the country, a lot of times they have foundation and structural issues. Unfortunately, sometimes there's nothing you can do about it. If you walk into a house, an old house, and you put a ball on the ground, like a tennis ball or something, if that ball starts rolling to one side or the other, you know that there's obviously uneven floors. Now, this could be just some settling and it is what it is, or you could have a major issue that you need to address. So what you should be doing is if you're looking for these properties, you should be looking for cracks in the doorways. So if you have the square doorway, you should be looking for cracks that go up to the ceiling. You should walk around the house. Are you seeing cracks in the brick that kind of go down, stagger all the way down? These are foundation issues. And most of the time, foundation issues are going to cost you, and this is going to be in the tens of thousands of dollars to fix this. You're going to have to hire a very specialized construction company crew to come out there and handle that. They're going to have to dig up around the foundation. They're going to secure it. They're going to have to do all of the work, which takes a lot of man hours and a lot of material to support the property and get it situated right. Otherwise, you could just have a very, lopsided type house. And ultimately that's not going to be very attractive to a great resident. So a great resident wants to walk into a house and not have to be leaning to one side. They just really want to be able to walk down the hall and not be tilting. These old houses have issues. So before you buy them, if you are going to buy them, I should be very, very careful. Make sure that there aren't any major foundation issues, and then make sure you're walking these properties. If you're buying it sight unseen from out of state, you don't know what the floors are like. You don't know. And likely the person selling you is not going to give you full disclosure about the floors and the foundation. This is a huge problem with old houses, especially if you live in certain parts of the country where it is more common to have these problems. So beware when you're buying these old houses. Number 4, in a lot of these old houses, there could be major code violations. And this is going to be a big problem, especially if you're trying to rent it Section 8. So Section 8 is going to require certain things. They're going to require things like an egress in every room and every bedroom. So can somebody get out? Is there a place to get out of the house? They're going to require that the windows open. They're going to require that you have handrails on certain stairs. So also, if you start updating the house and you start getting permits, well, somebody with the city may come out and say, oh, not only are you going to have to do this, but you're going to have to do all of these other things. So think about it. I mean, there's a number of things. I wrote down a number of things that could be a problem. If you have a hot water heater that's in a closed off closet without any ventilation, which is what they used to do a lot of times, that's a code violation. You're going to have to do something about that. Either going to have to move the hot water heater, or you're going to have to put ventilation in that closet. Another one would just be, again, I already mentioned handrails. We already talked about electrical issues. Every plug has to be grounded. Old aluminum wiring. Think about smoke detectors, things like that. Low ceiling clearance in finished basements. So sometimes these basements are really low. I walked in a house the other day. I was looking at buying and the ceiling was super low and I was like, not up to code. And then B, it's not attractive. Residents don't want to live in a house where the ceilings are 7 foot, especially if you're a 6 foot person. So there's all kinds of things a lot of problems that could open up for you if you buy these older homes and you have to have them inspected, if you need the city to come out and do work. So what you intended to be maybe a $10,000 rehab or a $15,000 rehab all of a sudden balloons into a $20,000 to $25,000 rehab that you weren't expecting. And so you have to be very, very careful because there could be hidden code violations. All right, number 5. The name of the game in all of owning rental property is keeping a resident in the house. And the problem with these older houses is great residents usually want to find someplace else. If you're charging market rent, if you have market rent at $1,000 a month or $1,500 a month, and there's a house down the street that's newer or around the block that's newer and not as old and crusty as this house that you bought, then guess what? A great resident is going to go, well, you know what? I can spend about the same amount of money and live in a better house. And so what happens is you have somebody move out after 12 months. They pay on time every month for 12 months, and about 60 days out, 30 days out, they turn in notice and say, I'm moving. And what you notice is in these older houses, this becomes the norm. When you have great residents, they start moving out because they don't want to live in an uneven house. They're tired of making excuses for why everything breaks. They're just tired of the hassle of living in an old, crusty house and with outdated stuff. And so they look for something newer. And something newer, the crazy thing is something newer could just be like 1960 or 1970. There's a huge difference between a house built in 1920 and 1910 versus 1960 and 70. Not only from a modernization, but also from an efficiency standpoint. Probably their heating bill is going to be lower. Their air bill, just depending on where you live in the country, their electricity bill is going to be lower. So this is a big problem with these older houses. They tend not to keep residents long-term because residents kind of get tired of these old beat up houses that are, lopsided floors. And so this is a huge problem. This is a big, big issue that we see with old homes is just a lot of resident turnover, and you never make money owning rental property if a resident is moving out every 12 months. All right, number 6, insurance and lending issues with these older houses, especially if they've been beat up, especially if they're, need a big rehab, then that you're not going to get financing, traditional finance. You're not going to go to a bank and they're not going to be excited about an old piece of crap because that's their collateral. So what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to find a hard money lender. You're going to have a private lender, maybe take out a HELOC and buy that house, which is fine. But then even at that point, you may have some lenders that are not really excited about lending on that if you want to refinance, or you might have insurance providers that may charge you more, especially if it's a rental house. Now, there are some providers out there, some insurance providers that are pretty decent. They'll work with investors, but a lot of times the rates are higher. And so people go in and they start saying, oh, well, I'm going to get, what I'm spending for my house is about the same rate. It's not going to be the same rate, especially with some of these older houses. There's just going to be more trouble, probably more expense when you think about lending, you think about insurance. So beware of that. These are some of the issues that you're definitely going to face when you're buying these older houses. And the big one, number 7, this is the biggest one, is death by 1,000 repairs. These older houses need more repair. That's all there is to it. Even if you have it rehabbed really, really well, this may be good for the first 12 months, 18 months, but really when you get into that 12 to 24 month period, if it's been rehabbed really well, you're going to start having problems. These older houses just have problems. It could be electrical problems. It could be plumbing problems. It could be just wear and tear. If you have a resident in there that's living in the house, let's say you have a Section 8 resident in there and they're living in there more because they don't have a job. And so they're flushing more toilets, they're flipping more light switches. There's always room for more repair. And what we've noticed is if we looked at old house stock in the Southeast and in the Midwest, where a lot of investors love to buy because they can buy cheaper houses, which we don't have any problem with that, but we also like to warn them, just beware, because your repairs and your maintenance are going to be more, and you should be setting aside enough money for maintenance and repairs. And then you have to think about CapEx. You have to think about the bigger repairs, the HVAC, the roof, all of these things, depending on where you are in the country. If you're in the Midwest, guess what? Summers are really hot and winters are brutal, and that beats a roof down. And so you're going to have to replace that roof. If it's a 20-year roof, you may have to replace it every 15 years, not 20 years. And so think about these types of things. There's just going to be more repair. These houses get beat up a lot. And a lot of times, if you're buying them from a turnkey provider, you really don't know the quality of the rehab and the repair. And ultimately, these things cost more than anybody has. Like, I've not really ever known an investor who had their spreadsheet and they were so conservative that at the end of their, year, 2 year, 3 year with this property, they look back and they said, oh, wow, this was a lot less in repairs than I've ever expected. We tend to, as investors, be more optimistic and less cautious, especially when we're thinking about taking a risk and we're thinking about, hey, we want some cash flow. We struggle with the accurate and the very, very careful number of repairs that we're going to have to do. And so I just would encourage you, I'm begging you, set aside more than you ever think for repairs and maintenance, along with CapEx that may happen every 4 to 5 years. So this is a big one. Like number 7 is a big one. The repairs I've seen just eat people up, and it's a slow death, right? So it's a slow death by 1,000 repairs over a long period of time. All right, here's a bonus tip for you. You can buy old houses in really great areas of town. What we say A-class areas, right? So these are old historic homes, and you're still going to have a lot more expense probably than what you imagined, but they're beautiful houses, maybe even sometimes $1 million houses, which are great. A lot of people don't buy those for rental, but sometimes they do. However, here's the bonus tip. You want a double whammy that can really eat up all your profit, then you buy an old house in a really bad part of town. If you're buying an old house in a Class D neighborhood, high crime, bad schools, recipe for disaster. You will lose money. I can promise you. I've seen it over and over and over again. My advice is don't do it. There are endless reasons why you should never buy an old property, but if you want to know another type of property you should never buy because you will always lose money, then watch this video right here.